Today, it's my pleasure to begin a talk on the Internet of Conservation, a really exciting initiative that a number of us have been working on over the last couple of years. I'm joined by my colleagues Jez, Eric, Jake, and Chris, who will be presenting different aspects of the Internet of Conservation. I believe many of you this morning heard about my own organization, WCS, from our CEO this morning in her keynote. We're a global conservation organization working in over 50 countries, protecting over 27 million square kilometers of high-integrity land around the world, working with over 3,000 staff and working with thousands of communities around the world. And we do that through a global presence with our nature strongholds in a number of countries around the world.
I'm Eric Schmidt with Wildlife Protection Solutions. We're a nonprofit group who specialize in the deployment of long-range remote surveillance systems in service of protected areas globally. We work extensively with different AI providers to provide insights into the data that these networks collect, and also have several education and outreach projects as well. We do these activities around the world in more than 200 field projects supporting a variety of different partners, ranging from national parks, provincial parks, and private reserves as well.
Afternoon. My name is Jake Wall. I'm Director of Research and Conservation for Mara Elephant Project, as well as recently now with the EarthRanger team. So Mara Elephant Project is a relatively small organization in Kenya. We're based in the Mara in Lemet Conservancy. We have both on-the-ground operations and ranger teams, as well as a research department. And so we're on both sides, mitigating elephant conflict, collecting data, as well as building conservation technology and the Ecoscope project that I'll be talking about in a bit.
So let me begin by talking a little bit about the context. The last 100+ years of industrialization have created immense pressure on our ecosystems, and we're at an incredibly challenging time for us as humanity, for the planet itself. Biodiversity loss, climate change, zoonotic diseases are all placing a question on the future of the planet and certainly the future of humanity. At the same time, many of us are optimistic. We believe that a child born today may, not definitely will, but may see the global recovery of nature. And it's with that we're very happy that there are initiatives like 30 by 30 that aren't just about protecting what we've covered today, but expanding what is protected, doubling the area of terrestrial lands that are protected, quadrupling the area of marine lands that are protected. But one thing we believe is we will fail to protect those lands unless we ensure people in the field, those doing conservation, are able to do their work more efficiently, and we provide them new capabilities tomorrow that we can't even dream today. With 30 by 30, that doubling and quadrupling of effort will not come with a doubling and quadrupling of effort. It will come with a world that is increasingly complex. And so only by technology stepping up and taking its part to make sure people can do more will we actually succeed. That's not to say we're not proud of what we've achieved so far with conservation technology. Over the last 15 years, it has been such an incredible experience to be part of all the collaborations and partnerships we've heard about over the last three days. SMART, as WCS's CEO talked about this morning, we begun that with a vision of, can we get to 100 sites? 12 years on, we're at 1,200 and growing. And Smart's not the only one that's seen those immense growth. EarthRanger is now at over 500 sites. And there are many other applications out there supporting social science data collection, project planning, wildlife monitoring, coral reef monitoring. And it has been an incredible 10 years in conservation where we've created tools that allow people on the front line of protection, of wildlife monitoring, of working with communities to do more with new tools. But if we are going to step up to that challenge, we shouldn't be our success should not be measured in hundreds and thousands of sites. It needs to be measured in tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of sites protected. We need to be providing tools that work for the most complex and sophisticated protected area and the most simple, small OECM managed by a community on the planet. We need to have tools that will help people respond not just to today's threats, but the threats we can't even imagine that are going to come tomorrow. We need to ensure that we're building tools that not only are powerful in themselves, but also create a platform on which others to innovate, to bring in new solutions. And we need to look at making sure we optimize the resources we have, not just optimizing those on the front line of conservation, but also for those of us building technology, we need to make sure we're not all building the same tools. We're not having redundant efforts, but we're leaning into each other's efforts and building on each other's shoulders to make sure we provide the best solutions possible. And we believe we have found a way forward to respond to that challenge. On the technology side, to continue to build these incredible applications we've been building, but also do more, provide more capabilities, and ensure those on the front line of conservation can deliver more and more impact as time moves forward. So with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Chris.
Thank you, Jonathan. Chris Doehring here from the EarthRanger team. And written down some notes so I don't miss anything. First of all, we're all aware of the variety of data at our disposal, from tracking devices on animals and ranger radios to other assets to automated sensors on the ground and even in satellites. All this data is critical for making for decision makers. How do you switch this guy? Sorry. Okay. Oh, you touchscreen, fancy. Okay, thank you. And let's see. To gain the most of all this information, it's critical to get it into the platforms where you're using it to make sense of it all. In the past, this meant building dozens of different integrations, for each platform, each one requiring time-consuming development and maintenance. As part of the Internet of Conservation, we're now building Gundi, a universal adapter for conservation data sources and platforms. Gundi is a set of services to use to build the data integration once and make it available to the entire conservation community. Thanks. As part of the Internet of Conservation, we're now building Gundi, a user. Gundi is a Swahili word for glue, and it's also the name we've chosen for a collaborative effort to enable easy integration of conservation technologies. Gundi is built by and for the conservation community, and it's meant to make your lives easier. And by you, I mean sensor developers who can begin using Gundi to make your data available to multiple platforms instantly, application developers to easily consume these data, and also protected area staff to make data-driven decisions in the platforms you already use today. Thanks. Gundi supports an ever-growing list of tracking devices, a dozen data platforms, and 4 conservation platforms. At the moment, we're serving 550 sites and growing. We're processing over 1 million data points a day through Gundi. Frankly, I'm really proud of what Gundi has done, but I'm also really proud of what we've learned as we've been building Gundi. In the past, we built integrations with narrow focus on very specific needs. But in building Gundi, we've learned we're creating a set of services to support a lively ecosystem of sensors and platforms for the conservation community. We're opening up hundreds of services to the platforms you're using already today. And as new sensors and platforms emerge, Gundi will support those too. Thank you. And with that, I will pass the mic to Eric Schmidt.
Cool. The next component that we believe is critical for the Internet of Conservation, we're calling Akili, which, following a bit of a theme, means sense in Swahili. We envision Akili as a universal sensor data repository and AI integration tool set. So this is something that will be Gundi integrated. It will provide a maximum flexibility for groups to store their data in the way that they see fit to meet both needs locally as well as in a cloud, and honor sovereignty agreements from around the world that they may have made. And it will also facilitate use of any type of AI and facilitate workflow around that in an easy-to-use manner. The collaborating members of the Gundi partnership are Wildlife Conservation Society, WWF, and Wildlife Protection Solutions. And we are talking with all major providers of AI, including Conservation X Labs, who won the award this morning, Driven Data, San Diego Zoo, Wildlife Alliance, and University of Bonn, as well as many others. And we want to hold that door as wide open as we possibly can. So if you're working with AI, please be sure and visit us and talk with us about how you can participate in the Akili approach and platform. Fundamentally, Akili is designed to meet many needs. The first and foremost is those of conservation. We want the product roadmap to be 100% responsive to the needs of field conservationists. We understand that we need to be flexible in the way that we're approaching data policies so that you can share or restrict the data that you may have contained in the platform and honor those needs completely. Akili will work with a variety of different AI as well as allow you to serialize it. So if you need to understand how to filter the blanks first and then look for specifics afterwards, you can absolutely do that. Akili will be responsive, as I mentioned, to data sovereignty needs and provide you with bring your own cloud approaches so that you can be sure that the data that you have is managed in the way that you want it to be. And we need to enable tools to allow you to discover new ways of using this data through AI model zoos and playgrounds to allow you to find out new AI techniques that you may want to apply, and then try those out and see if it's going to be right for the project that you're working with. How does this fundamentally help the community? That's the really exciting part about the entire Internet of Conservation. It serves all stakeholders involved. For those who are machine learning developers, you don't have to worry about the fundamentals of the architecture and standing up all of the overhead that is involved. You can get right into the exciting elements of focusing on innovating the models that you have. You can understand that you have a new point of integration for new and well-refined training data. You'll be able to post your content and models into a model zoo and ensure that people can discover those quite easily. Protected area staff gain a new workflow tool where they can efficiently manage their data, try out different AI models, leverage different inferences, and share that, as well as ensuring that there's a robust scientific approach to the entire process. And application developers can be sure that integrating with this platform will bring to bear all of the standards that you would expect, such as APIs for advanced reporting, analytics, and alerts. This really lets everyone specialize in what they do best. The machine developers can focus on the model development, as I mentioned. The Akili team will handle all of the back-end plumbing, database security, orchestration, the boring stuff, and we're happy to do it. The practitioners can focus on the field data collection, getting more training data, and consumable costs, like getting more cameras and field sensors out there. We will, of course, support desktop aspects to allow you to optimize reviewing and labeling data. And you will be able to integrate data from both mobile and desktop into Akili. Fundamentally here, I won't get too much into the technicalities, but you've got the ability to load data into Achille. Of course, you'll be able to do that through Gundi. Within Achille itself, you'll be able to set up and configure various projects, understand what type of AI you want to apply, and then have that output in ways that you can use to export the information through standard tools, and of course other Internet of Conservation connected items such as Ecoscope, which you'll hear about in a moment. The minimum viable product for Achille is currently underway, and it will focus on really the basics at this point, supporting the latest camera trap data standards, user account management, robust uploader for the data that you have, cloud storage initially, artificial intelligence to filter the blanks and provide some amount of species detection, exporting data through data standards and common metadata prototypes, and desktop support created in collaboration with the existing tool sets that are out there currently serving the community. And the roadmap, we'll see this growing exponentially over time. So we'll be able to have a full data sharing model implemented. You'll be able to review and tag AI inferences to verify that they are correct. We will be moving to a federated data storage system so you can bring your own cloud or potentially your own compute and maybe even share that as appropriate depending on your needs. The AI model and marketplace is what really excites me because that's where you'll be able to try out all of the different AIs that you'll be able to discover and have available to you. Of course, video support is planned in the intermediate term, as well as innovative new techniques like camera trap distance sampling. And finally, we don't want to just ring fence the notion that this is only for camera trap and imagery. Of course, we want to get into supporting audio, eDNA, and other types of sensors as we go over time. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jake to talk more about Ecoscope, to how to analyze all this wonderful data.
Thanks. Sorry if this is repetitive from the talk from yesterday, but I'm presenting Ecoscope. So this is a, here's the, basically born out of the problem statement of how do we efficiently turn the data that we're collecting into conservation information that can actually be used for policy, for answering research, and for management, and really streamlining that process of getting the data in these wonderful databases, but then turning it into outputs that we can use to move the needle. Just in the last few days, I've had multiple conversations with people who are all sort of doing a similar thing and have developed different workflows using different tools, basically to achieve similar outputs like maps, graphs, reports, and we've all been sort of working in our, not silos, but different ways, and Ecoscope is a chance, we feel, to bring that together, to leverage the intellectual thinking that's gone into a lot of these things, but bring it into a common sort of code base and approach. And so that's what we're trying to build. So hopefully providing standardized approaches to reporting, standardized analyses, making those tools very simple and available, and on this IOC principle of things being open source and freely available and supported. So we have various personas that we've identified, including developers that are going to build these tools, researchers that are going to put their intellectual thought into what analyses are needed, and then the managers who are consuming those and providing a lot of the ideas, and ultimately decision makers who want to base decisions off of data and be data driven. So what we're looking at is an analysis pipeline that will be we've got a prototype of right now that consists of analysis modules that are really set up to streamline answering specific questions. These typically need to run in their own environment. They'll be stood up by this analysis pipeline and lead to data results, which then can be consumed by different visualization tools, we will provide a UI dashboard environment as well to look at those visualizations, and then we'll also be focused on how do we get, what is the best way to consume this information? Is it in a dashboard? Will a minister actually open a dashboard and look at that, or would they prefer to get a PDF report? And so there will be a lot of work to figure out what is the best way to communicate the results of data. Just quickly run through some of the existing modules, and this is actually just a handful, but things like trend monitoring of collar voltages. This is a very clear example of a management output that we can provide. So, is your collar voltage sinking below what you would normally want to see, or within the historic variance? And now we need to change that collar. It's things like speed monitoring. So, where do elephants go? How fast are they traveling? We can see, certain high-speed movements which may have been triggered by certain conditions, and this is a very easy output to generate now. Similarly, elephant home range, delineation of core and dispersal areas, we can do very, very quickly now using Ecoscope, and we hope to extend the core set of analytical functions greatly. One of the sort of more complicated analyses is treating your data as a network and looking at network metrics. So this is a betweenness index that we've calculated based on the tracking data that's come straight out of EarthRanger. So this is an example of a sort of more analytical tool that we'll be able to apply very easily. Things like covariate labeling. So we have integrations with Google Earth Engine as well as other analytical packages. This is an astronomy module that takes every point and figures out, was it day or night? We can also do moon phase, luminosity, or if you were to think, every point in this track, what was the elevation? What was the vegetation content? What was the rainfall over the last year at that point? So we can now integrate very easily with Google Earth Engine. Some of the more environmental monitoring tools, this is normalized difference vegetation index, which is a measure of photosynthetic activity in plants. And so you can see the spatial variation now in NDVI. This is the elephant range that spans both the Serengeti and Mara. And you can see a clear rainfall gradient from this map. And then we also have tracking the trend in NDVI over the last year compared to the historical variation in NDVI for the last 20 years. Fire monitoring, so a lot of the sites that we're working with are driven in part by fire ecology. You can see the burn rates in the Serengeti, for instance. So we have tools now as well that integrate with Google Earth Engine data sets and can pull out very useful metrics, like when did a part of the landscape last burn? Where has fire occurred? And rainfall monitoring. So again, linked to the NDVI, but we have a very strong west-east rainfall gradient in the Mara that comes out from this map. And part of what we also want to do is make it easy to do temporal trend fitting. So if you've got time series data, it should be very easy for you to use Ecoscope to then fit temporal trend series. Another example is deforestation. So here we've got a deforestation module in Ecoscope that can pull out the land cover data from Google Earth Engine to tell you where you have forest loss and current forest cover, as well as the ability to quickly generate survival curves. So you can, it's a nice way to visualize how much forest is remaining from an initial amount. As well as supporting some of the more sort of GIS tools. So we can do connect to spatial database and do things like feature density. So this is an example of road density in the Masai Mara, and where do we have the most secondary and tertiary roads. And then finally, we'll be able to schedule and run these modules and configure them, and then be able to interact with the results within a UI environment, which should make it much more accessible to run even complicated analyses. What we find too is that a lot of conservation organizations have very, very similar needs for reporting. And actually, when you narrow it down, you can probably figure out about 95% of the needs for reporting with just a few analysis modules. So we'd like to really streamline and make that easy. Great, so thank you. And who's next here?
Thanks, Jake. Nope, you missed a slide. But okay. So we want to share in here. Do you want to? I think there are some important things in here, but some of the ideas of Ecoscope, then I'll use my Jake Wall voice, are to shift technology away from just data collection and move it more into the analysis and insight. And then maybe even someday into recommendation. We're not claiming that's really possible today, but at some point in the future, perhaps. The leveraging of data from multiple platforms and being able to analyze those data together. So, for example, with the deforestation map, you can imagine a deforestation layered on top of patrol effort. So you can see whether or not your patrol efforts have been effective in curbing deforestation. Increasing the impact of both existing and new technology. So like the original concept of EarthRanger, as new technology becomes available, how do we then bring that into what we're already doing and improve on our existing efforts? And then this is a benefit that we added. It's more specific to EarthRanger, but by leveraging other application APIs as opposed to raw data access, we can also pick up any sort of permissions and that are recognized by that original platform. So if you are calling an API service from EarthRanger, from Smart Connect, and if that API then changes the data that you're receiving based on who you are and who is the user that's using that service, then it can also then take those permissions into account in the analysis. So for example, if I am a researcher in a protected area and I have visibility into some species of animals but not others, when I run the analyses through Ecoscope, it will be leveraging the same data that I have access to if I were interacting directly with EarthRanger. So in Ecoscope, my reports would only show me data about the species that I have permissions to see. And then Jake did mention the sharing of the results. So thanks, Jake. No, they're good points. But we also believe that these are just 3 examples of many other types of applications that can really commonly be helpful to lots of different conservation applications. The one that even comes up as very apparent just in the conversation of these 3 is shared identity. So being able to log into Ecoscope, and now you're automatically logged into Smart Connect and also EarthRanger. And by granting permissions in one of them, you're also granting similar permissions in the others. But there are many, many others of these kinds of things that go into the building of any application and any technology that people undertake. We estimate that it's pretty hard to do this very scientifically, but we estimate that if you are undertaking a new technology software project, and you're doing that because you have this fantastic idea of how you're going to be the best at applying a new AI model to detect individual cheetahs, say. By the time that you actually start working on applying your model for cheetah identification, you've probably already spent 80% of your total effort and budget for the whole project. Instead, you were working on UI frameworks, on build scripts to compile the software, on how it gets deployed, on how you manage logging, on how you handle errors, on all of et cetera, how you manage permissions and settings, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And very, very little of the overall effort is actually going into what makes this thing unique and useful. And going back to Jonathan's original presentation, we won't get to the level of technology and the level of impact that we can have and what is necessary in order to protect the world if we continue to build things that way. There's not enough money, especially in conservation, to continue to operate in that fashion. We have to work together to turn that 80% into maybe 10, so that the remaining, if I did my math right, 70% of the total effort can actually go into the unique thing that is really making a difference. And that's something that we really believe that we can do together. And that's the idea which collectively we're referring to as the Internet of Conservation, is this mental shift that instead of working on projects in silos, instead of all of us building individual monolithic applications, instead can we ensure that any time that we collectively are working on anything, we can look at it from the perspective of who else could use this and make it available to them. And that's more than just open sourcing. Open sourcing is wonderful. It's great to contribute open source code to a community. But if you are writing some complicated application that has an entire stack of technology associated with it, and you throw it up on GitHub or wherever, what you've done is you've taken your entire Lego castle and glued all the pieces together and said, now anyone can build on top of my Lego castle. What we really need are the individual Lego blocks that people can build on top of. And so instead of just open sourcing, think about how can you instead shift the way you're thinking about building products to make the individual bricks available, and then build your castle using those individual bricks as well. And so what does this mean for all of us? Ultimately, this means an ecosystem of tools that all seamlessly work together. The seamlessly part is challenging. It requires effort, but it will pay off massive dividends. It means the ability to enhance all the tools that you use today. We are very excited about the existing uptake of Gundi, for example, and we looking forward to seeing that much further. We're it's fantastic that whenever the Gundi team takes on an integration to a new collar manufacturer, say, that there are now 4 different systems that can now say that we are integrated with that collar, and they didn't have to actually touch anything. They just pick that up automatically. This ultimately enables innovation, coming back to the point of the 80 and 20 and 10 and all of that, allowing people to really focus on the pieces that matter to them, allow all of those resources to go so much further. It's also how we'll get to advanced capabilities, not only things that we can dream of, but we'll all be able to adopt these new technologies as they become available, but also projects and products and organizations that wouldn't have had access to these technologies now can, because they can adopt from this existing suite. Yeah, I think that's really where I wanted to say it. So I hope that this is a compelling vision, that it feels as compelling to all of you as it does to us. I think it also is an idea. I'll be talking about this in about 2 hours now. But I think it's also an idea that applies to more than technology. And I really encourage everyone to think about what it means to truly collaborate, not just give people a copy of what you've done, but truly deeply collaborate. And I couldn't be more proud to be part of this initiative. I think I'll pick on the Gundi project because it's the furthest along. I think it's phenomenal that if you go to a team meeting for Gundi, there are people there who they receive paychecks from 3 different organizations. You wouldn't know that. You don't know who's coming from what organization. You know that they are a combined team of people that are working towards a common objective, and they are a team. And I encourage you all to think of your work in the same way, and we are all going to proceed with our work under the same concept. Thank you. Do we have a mic out there? Not yet. Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks. Is it on? Can you hear me?
can always hear you, Ted.
But you can hear me without a microphone. But is it the sound guy's good? Okay, awesome. All right. Thanks, Jess. Amazing where this has gone and the potential of it. I'm guessing for a lot of the people in the room, this feels somewhat abstract. And of course, we've talked about this. And I'm curious if we could maybe provide a few examples, or maybe some of the folks in the audience could say, hey, what about this thing or that thing? And have you guys put it in context? I think there was a list of Gundi that we flashed by pretty quickly, and I can offer one. So Skylight, if you think of Skylight, we built a UI, but now we could get rid of the UI because we can just attach and have attached Skylight data outputs to Gundi, and now it's available to Smart, it's available to EarthRanger. If we could convince the guys over on the Coast Guard side of things to tie into Gundi, it would be available to them too. So I understand that power. Jake gave a lot of examples. The one I'm a little bit less clear on, and I didn't see quite as many examples on, was on Akili. And I'd love to hear some examples there. And I'd love to really throw in, if it's too big to tackle, there's some of us, I think, in the room that have been trying to figure out how to get AI models for aerial wildlife surveys in. And if it's too big to tackle that, give me some other example. But I'd love to hear some examples on Akili.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think fundamentally with regard to Akili, there are a lot of reproduction of efforts in different platforms that we're beginning to see. So each AI provider is maybe building things like workflow tools around inferences, tagging, verifying tags.
When you say tags, do you mean annotations?
Annotations, correct, yeah. Those...
Machine learning engineers, so.
Sorry.
We'll talk about
those sorts of things. And, that fundamentally is a tool that's required for the job, but there's no innovation going into that. There's not a new way to say, this is a photo of an elephant.
Depressingly, the Skylight team just spent a bunch of time building annotation.
Right.
Maybe we can
So the vision of Akili there, and what you gain is to say, look, we'll link up with the platform. It's got all that baseline fundamental utilities, done for you, so you can focus what would otherwise go into creating yet another way to say this photo is an elephant, into putting your efforts into how do I identify the elephant peripherally from the airplane, for example. So really ramping up the part that's going to actually innovate and move the industry forward, as opposed to keep creating wheel-shaped objects one after another for each specific tool.
Can I just follow very briefly on that, because I've got two examples in mind. So let's say the annotation tool the Skylight team built, we could contribute that into...
Please do.
Thank you. We're identifying fishing vessels, obviously. The folks doing the aerial wildlife surveys, they're looking at obliques, and some people are looking at nadirs, and looking for elephants, buffalo. If I'm somebody that's doing aerial wildlife surveys, can I come into a library and say, hey, I want the models that do nadirs because that's what I'm interested in? How do I know that I want fishing vessels versus oblique images of elephants? How does Akili help me figure that out?
Right, so that's really where that model library and model playground come into play. The idea is that you bring your data set to bear, a subset of it, probably 200, 300 images, so you get a feel for it. You pick your model and say, go gadget, and see what comes out of that. And if the results are satisfactory, you take the next step, spin up a project, and you're off to the races. If it's close or something that is intriguing to you, but not quite, we want to also be able to facilitate communication between you and the model provider, because one of the things they told us in our due diligence and research with them is we're desperate for just how is this stuff working in the real world. And so we want to create that full circle loop so they can get the word back and, potentially in that scenario, modify we're good at detecting elephants obliquely, but maybe not fishing vessels. Can we retrain using the same fundamental techniques and just adapt the thing, and that becomes yet another model in the library that somebody else on the other side of the world has a unique new use for.
Yeah, one thing that I'd love to add to that also, and this might come off a little bit conceited at first, bear with me, it's not intended to be. Because we have teams focused on each one of these individual pieces as its own product, we can do these pieces better than another product that is doing it just as part of what they do. We have Chris. It's not the core of what you do, but because it is the core of what these products do, we can. They collectively will be better as a result.
So, yeah, and maybe just to provide a perspective from my perspective. So, WCS, as we illustrated, we have the nature strongholds that we're supporting around the world. Currently, today, if someone's collecting video data in Congo, they put it in a tool called Zamba Cloud. If someone's collecting camera trap data in South America, they put it in Wildlife Insights. There are about 8 different tools people push their camera trap data in today because depending on what their need is, their question, they want to connect it to a different AI model. So firstly, I have to deal now with data in 8 different systems. Secondly, all of my different constituents, if they decide, well, actually, I want to answer another question, they have to pull all that data out of one system, push it into another. And then thirdly, all of those 8 systems, they're all duplicating effort. And many of these systems, they're funded by our dollars, because we all contribute and raise funds to build these tools. So for every dollar of value we could be getting today, we're getting 1/12 of that, an 1/8 of that, because we're spreading our effort out, we're repeating it, and we're creating complex systems to maintain. I want my data to go into one place, and I want Achille to orchestrate access to whatever AI models that are available to my team. And that's where the value comes from me. Should we go to another question?
Good day. From a layman's point of view, I can say I am presented with a bowl full of different fruits. So my question is, where is the line between all these tools? I'm asking this question because I'm coming from a country that currently doesn't have any analysis tool. So I want an answer that can help me take a decision. I know part of the answer will be it will depend on what you want to do with the information. But like I said, I want an explicit answer.
No, it's a good question. I think the main message here is that it's sort of a services approach, right? So you're going to have different services to do different analyses. So for instance, if you're focused on analyzing camera trap data and doing machine learning on camera trap data, that will be a very specific thing that Achille will let you do. And if you need to get your data from one database into Achille, then that will be something that Gundi can do. And if you need to, so I think we need to do a good job at this is still early days in many ways of what this is, but it's basically a set of components that will specialize so that you don't have to have one system that does everything. And sorry if that doesn't answer your question, but yeah.
Yeah. So Jonathan and I had this challenge also in explaining this to our organizations, and we had these calls where we would explain the concept, and we would say, "You get it?" And they would say, "No." And then we would try another analogy and say, now surely you get it. And they said, no. So I think one of the a lot of the tools that are part of this Internet of Conservation are not intended to be directly used by folks like yourselves who are doing work on the ground. A lot of them are pieces that will be adopted by other application developers to allow those applications to be less redundant, easier to develop, and more powerful. And so where you'll see the effect of these tools is when you log in to user is you can do these things in smart. And so it's a little bit of a non-answer, but these are all elements of a toolbox that can be used to build a house. And we want to make sure that the house is as easy to build and as lovely to live in as possible, so that it's a fantastic thing for you.
The only thing I would add to that is when we get this right, you won't know the difference between the tools. It'll just be the tool you're working in, and all of these services serve you to your end. And it won't matter. Just like Gundi is with EarthRanger now, you're all using it if you're using EarthRanger. Surprise. That's how it needs to be.
And I'm going to give one more answer on this again, just to so we get, because it is important. We learn and think and we understand where the value is here, why this is important. In the same way, the same answer I gave for Achille. Currently today, WCS is involved in multiple partnerships creating conservation technology solutions: SMART, EarthRanger, Wildlife Insights, ConsoSci. Every one of those has spent hundreds of thousands in creating a reporting tool and continues to invest in those reporting tools. Duplicate investments. The staff in my organization, they all have to learn different reporting tools because all of these tools use different reporting tools. And they can only analyze the data in silos. They analyze the SMART data in the SMART and the EarthRanger data in EarthRanger and Google Earth data in Google Earth Engine. What we're talking about here, because this is a service that can fit into any application, I know that every dollar invested in building reporting and analytics tools isn't just going into one application, it's going into every application. I know that my staff and the partners, people in the staff from my partner organizations, they only have to learn one tool, and they can get better at those one tools rather than trying to figure out swapping between tools. So this is about doing things efficiently on the technology side, providing capabilities to practitioners, and making sure we can actually provide far more services with the same dollar. So I think one more question.
It's maybe more just working, or maybe more a comment than a question, because there's kind of almost two different things we're hearing here. One is the building blocks, the Lego blocks, so you can build your own, and it works. And the other one is like, we build one and it works for everybody. And I think the build one and works for everybody in the past has not been very successful, especially in the camera trap space. So that's always, I think what's important is have APIs, have data standards, have compatibility where you can, Gundi does exactly that, right? You connect different systems. What we maybe need for camera trap is more a GBIF of camera trap data that can harvest data from different systems, because there's limitations in what one system can do. There's legal limitations on where the data can be hosted. So I think, personally, I like the building block approach. I like the data standard and the API approach where you can tie things together, because finding that one system that works for everybody has been always very difficult.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're not saying that someone is going to log into an Internet of Conservation portal and be able to do what they need to do. What we're saying is, in all of these applications that are being built, if you go back to the Lego analogy, we're not saying that everyone is going to use this same complete Lego castle that we made. What we're saying is that not everyone needs to build the yellow Lego brick. Right? We can build the yellow Lego brick and make the best yellow Lego brick, and then everyone can use that as creatively, not only as creatively, but also it's good to have some competition in there, right? Because you need new ideas, you need things to stir up the pot and look at things a new way, and you can still make a completely new castle using the same yellow brick. Is that all we have time for?
Yeah, well, we've gone over. So, again, thank you everyone for your time. If you're as excited as we are today, welcome. If you're not as excited as we are today, you will be. Because this will transform how we build tools. So thank you again.